Hello, welcome to Math for All, where we try to make math creative, curious, and inclusive for everyone. I'm Molly Volke.
I'm Heidi Subnani. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We're really excited to be speaking with Maegan today. And if you would like to follow along on social media to know who is coming up next, you can find us on Blue Sky or our Math for All YouTube channel, or there is also a Facebook group that you can follow where we will have who our upcoming speakers are and any information that you need if you are wanting to see us in person or find out a little bit more about the people that are on. That's a great space to do that. So we hope that you will find us in those spaces.
Yes. And you can go to our website if you want to know more about us and what we do. And our book, which I do not have handy.
Same.
Of course.
You can find it at didex.com
today. Yeah, so you can find it at Didex. Yes. Wonderful. But we are so excited to be talking about this. Is kind of almost a little bit of a continuation from last time, right? Yeah. So what important lessons can we learn from our little learners to teach older students math? So we are super lucky to be able to talk to Maegan Giroux today, and I'm going to tell you all about her. Maegan Giroux is an elementary mathematics teacher and instructional coach, specializing in innovative and inclusive math education. Currently teaching mathematics to kindergarten and grade 6-7 students, she holds a Master's of Education in Curriculum and Instruction, with her thesis focusing on decolonizing mathematics. As a sought-after speaker and facilitator, Maegan presents across Canada and the U.S., sharing her expertise in fostering deep mathematical thinking. She is also the co-author of Mathematics Tasks for the Thinking Classroom K-5, written in collaboration with Peter Liljedahl, further contributing to the field of engaging in student-centered mathematics instruction. So let's bring her in.
Hi, guys.
Oh, hi. Welcome. We're so happy that you're here.
I am so happy, too, because I think currently it's like minus 28, 29 here, like minus 30, which I think for you guys is actually still different. No, I think we meet at like minus 30.
Yeah.
Celsius, but I think we meet at minus 30. So it's like minus 30 here. So I'm so excited to be like I'm inside and warm and talking to you guys. It's so cold outside.
Yes, wow. We are not that cold, but today was a snow day in some areas, but in others not. My kids grumpily went off to school today.
And I went to school and my son stayed home today. So well.
It's always interesting during the winter what is actually going to happen if you live in the northern part of the U.S. or in it could be the southern part of Canada, really.
Yeah, I mean, once
pretty much depending on how far north you go.
Yeah,
it's only going to get more so. But Maegan, we always like to start with what is your math story? It helps people who may not have had the opportunity to get to know you, to know a little bit more about you and your how you came to be in Mathland.
Oh, I love that, like Mathland. It's so cute. I love that so much. So essentially, so I guess I should start at the very, very beginning. So my family is filled with teachers. Me and my two siblings are all teachers, and my sister is a speech pathologist in schools, but she's married to a principal. And my father was a high school chemistry teacher for 35 years and is still teaching. He teaches adult basic education, and he just turned 70. So he's been teaching for like 40 years. Like he's been teaching for so long. And I'm just like, maybe you should retire, but that's beside the point. And so essentially teaching has just always been something that we've all been really passionate about. However, math was always something that was really interesting to me because I kind of liked it, but I didn't really love it because I thought I was good at it. And I had a really traditional mathematics, learning. And I was bored with it all the time because I just thought I was so good at it. I was like, this is really boring. And then when I became a teacher, there was like different things coming out, like, like math centers. And like, I was like dipping my toe and having fun with these like few things. And then as time went on, I realized I was really bad at math, and then I loved it. And then I started to be like, this is the best thing ever, because
oh my gosh, this is so the opposite of so many stories. I love it.
No, well, and like, yeah, and I would say it probably happened like 6 or 7 like years ago. I was in this PD, and I was like, this is how this happens, and this is so cool. And I just have loved I have had this deep love for it over the last decade, because I found out I was bad at it. And there was so much more to learn. And like, even my math consultant came into my school last week, and we were talking about like how many hexagons would this take to make a bigger hexagon, and you can make it with 4, 9, 16. And so then I was like, oh my gosh, like they're all like the square numbers, this is amazing, did you know this? And she was like, yes, I knew that. I didn't know that. That's so cool. So essentially, I didn't like math because I thought I was good at it, and then I liked it when I realized I was bad at it. And so because of that, I just took in all PD. And then because of that, I started to really, really love this whole concept of like people not knowing, but like being okay with not knowing, and like walking through like that struggle. And then Peter's work came along, and I was like, yes, this is amazing. And then the rest is kind of history, because I just kept teaching. I was like, this is so amazing. And no one, I'm like, knows, and this is so great. I don't know, and you don't know, and that's amazing.
That, I think it should be the premise of education entirely, and it is, but it's not. Like, you go into classrooms, and specifically math classrooms. I don't know. I don't go into a ton of other types of classrooms at this point, but kids feel like they're supposed to know everything. I'm like, well, what would you be in school for if you knew everything? Like, I actually Hey, a teacher was talking today about how intimidated some students were about contributing to their group or to their class. And I'm like, but if they knew everything in 5th grade, they would be in 6th grade. So like, it's just, of course.
Yeah, like, what's the point? Yeah, like, right. What's the point of being here if you already know it?
Pretty basic, right?
Yeah, you can practice like I'm at home. It's fine. You don't have to come here to practice things. Like,
well, and like, where are the safe spaces to not know things, right? Mm-hmm. Like, shouldn't that be in education? Shouldn't it be like that is the place where we can play with ideas and think about things, and having the space and time for that, versus like having to know immediately, or immediately be able to take in and apply something. Like, these things happen over time, and it can happen over different amounts of time for different people. Like, we have these ideas sometimes that if it doesn't happen here, that it's not learning. I'm like, no, well, there's a range of learning, and how we learn, and providing the space for that, and like giving kids time with that is such a huge, well, it should be a huge gift within education, and far too often it's not.
Oh, absolutely. Well, or like another thing too is that I think people put their values in maybe the wrong place sometimes. And like, I don't think they mean to, but like an example is like, I teach kindergarten, like obviously, and I have a student who has pretty severe like autism, and he's kind of like semi-verbal. Like he would say some things, but he's not going to say like a full sentence to like anybody. And when we were doing the cards, he really needed to be A1. And so I was like, okay, you get to be A1, but you also have to share this like marker and be kind and talk, right? So that was the trade-off. And guess what? He was A1 for 4 months straight. I'm like, here's your one, because guess what? The other part was more important. And guess what? I didn't need him to do it like right away. And then about halfway through January, we told him 2 days before, like, we're like, tomorrow you will be a 2. And he goes, okay, we'll be a 2. You're going to be a 2. Okay. And then he was a 2, and then he was a 6. And now he just takes the cards. but
Yeah.
it's February, and this happened last week. He started taking the cards. So like, I don't have the luxury to be like, this needs to happen fast. I'm like, I need to just take it at their own pace, because otherwise my kindergarten kids will literally bang their head against the carpet because they cannot handle not being A1. But who cares? Who cares in that moment? There's just more important things. And I don't think we mean to do it, but it just kind of happens, right? We want it to be like picture perfect, nice and fast, nice and easy.
Well, and it's that we put that expectation on ourselves. Like, and no one's saying to do that. Like,
no,
that's like,
yeah, it's not happening.
Right. Just because like, and sometimes I feel like, and for those who are not, I'm presuming we're talking about like the cards to make random groups.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry.
Who's not listening. And it's that idea of like, you need to make this work in the space that you're in. So while like when we look at the scope of research, like, yes, it like random and groups of 3 or groups of 2 with younger kids. But this idea that it always has to be that, your students and what they need in those moments. Know
making
like
those
how
choices.
how to bring them into the larger idea of access to mathematics or literacy or whatever it is that you're doing. And so how are you providing access? That's the most important thing, not whether or not everybody in your kindergarten.
Yeah, exactly. In their first
say
day of school,
like,
they have random groups.
It can like is willing and or able at that moment to do that right then. Like, and this could be the same thing for as you move up the grade levels. Like, there are some students who need a more consistent kind of role in the classroom in order for them to have access. And so we have to think about that. Like, no one's saying you absolutely must do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
When we look at like best practice for what we're doing with our students in school.
Yeah. I agree that people put this on themselves, but also I think that it does take a few years for you to be able to see the forest through the trees or the trees through the forest, whichever way you want to look at it, right? To be able to have some perspective on what is the most important thing here, right? Like, sometimes I'm told to follow with fidelity, and so I do that because I'm young and I don't know.
Fidelity, that lovely word. Hey, we love that in education, specifically the United States loves that word.
Oh yeah, no, we're all for it, unless okay, I'm not going to be. Yes, unless we're dismantling all things, then we're for like that idea, and we forget that we teach people. Not subject areas. Like, we teach people. And so as a segue, as a segue, I love that you are both kindergarten and 7-8, and I heard you talk a little bit about this at the BTC conference in Phoenix, but I am so excited you're going to talk about it here today too.
It's a ride. I will tell you that it's a ride. I don't necessarily suggest it for most people, but I have learned a lot from it.
It's quite unusual.
Yeah,
it is a little unusual sometimes.
So what are some important lessons that we can learn from our little learners that help us teach older students mathematics?
Well, there's so many, by the way. And like, honestly, I've just been mulling over this concept because so currently, and this was true somewhat of like last year too, but currently I will almost always like every day go from teaching kindergarten and then having a 15-minute like recess and then going to teach 6-7. So like, not only do
so much time,
there's like, it's like, oh yeah, like, which is crazy too, because we live in a 2-story building. So I usually just go from downstairs, put some like water or coffee, and then go straight upstairs, and it's quite fast. But because of that, I've actually learned so many more like interesting things. So one of the things that we've kind of touched on too is that concept of like, so with my boy in kindergarten, So he needed a specific strategy to like be able to be present within this. But at the same time, I have a girl in my 6-7 class who she actually, right after I launched the lesson, she will go and take a quick like walk, because all of that chaos finding where to go, she gets really stressed by that. And so I launch it and she knows. And what happened was she would ask right before I launched every lesson, she would ask to go to the bathroom. And I was like, well, that's weird, because we just had like a recess. And so then finally, like, I was like, are you okay? And then we talked about it. And then, but then because of that, we kind of came up with this new solution of like, okay, I'm like launch, and then you do a quick walk. And then once everything's settled, she feels more okay with going to her group. Mm-hmm. But that's like a small thing, right? Like but it's huge for her. And once again,
huge for her, but you took the time to find out why she was doing that. And not all teachers do investigate that, especially teachers of middle school who have over 100 students. They might not take the time to do that. And that right there is impactful alone. Like, you took the time to say, like, what's going on with you? Can we figure this out? And she's going to remember that.
Well, but here's the like other and the part like where these two kind of connect is because in like kindergarten, like in kindergarten, we just like let them always go, right? Because like you're not gonna be like, you can't go. But like when you get to grade 6, 7, there's sometimes like where it's like, no, like you need to wait. Right. And so I think that because I am middle years trained, like I have a middle years degree in education. It is like grades 5 to 9 is what I was taught to teach. Kindergarten was nowhere near that. However, from being like I'm down there, I've kind of like noticed because I always say I'm like, yes, I've kind of like noticed, oh, like, you know, like when like does this like happen, and like those kinds of like things. And then I think I give them more grace, and like I want to know more about why those things are, because I think before the old Maegan would have just been like, no, wait, like you just had like recess, like you need to wait till recess, blah 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 blah. But it's obviously she was just trying to escape for some reason because it kept on happening. So that's kind of like a you know, a small thing that I think has happened because of VTC, like, yes, but I also think from teaching those like younger grades, because you just like see more of their vulnerability and they need more help and they're more open about help. So you like want to look for that help, versus I don't know if we always do that in the middle years. Like, I think we like focus so much on content, like the older you get, the more content focused. And that kind of comes to play with so many other things like empathy or patience. Like I have so much more patience dealing with a kid who is struggling with decimal division after having to take time with a kid who can't count or can't recognize his numbers to 10, right? Because it just kind of gives you perspective of like, oh, you know what? They might have been this kid at one point. And look at how far they have came. And, you know, where they start. So I think I think it gives me more of a perspective on like their growth and like what is possible, because sometimes like we're like, these kids just don't get it. I'm like, yeah, but look at where they start. So I see like where they start and then like very far into their education career. So, and I think that's been so helpful for me.
Well, and it's interesting, like, and I know things are a little bit different in Canada to US, but for us, like middle school is often beginning, at least the way our standards are written, they change in 5th or 6th grade. And so then there's a K5, and then there's a 6, 8 kind of situation that happens, and then the high school. And so we think about like, yes, we want them to be middle school, but when they come in 6th grade, they're just entering like from an elementary system where they're learning in many cases how to transition from classroom to classroom, how to handle multiple teachers, how to maybe have a locker, how to get along with different groups of kids, depending on what the setup of a school is, whether they move in pods or not in pods, or and in some cases they might be leveled or not, like depending on that situation. And when we think about all of the transitions that are needed in order to make that, like beginning of the year 6th grade, middle of this year 6th grade, and huge huge
Yeah.
differences between how they really interact with whatever it is that we happen to be teaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also feel like middle school, the expectation for middle school kids often is just like, well, you're 12, just suck it up and do what we're asking you to do, kind of thing. Like I don't mean to sound crass, but it really is the attitude that many teachers have, where if you're going like you do from kindergarten into a 6th or 7th grade classroom, I mean, what a difference that is. But because your perspective is changing, having looked at those kindergarten students, and really, like you said, is it that hard to acknowledge a kid's feelings when it can make a humongous impact on the structure of your classroom?
Oh, a huge thing. Well, because, in kindergarten, a kid's emotional well-being drives everything.
Mm-hmm.
The curriculum is really second. So I'm not getting anything done if I've got kids crying, if I've got kids upset about something, or someone said something mean. Whereas and it's funny because as I do that, I see the more you look for it, the more you find it too. Because I'm oh, there's some stuff going on with these 6, 7 girls. And even I walked in, I think it was on Monday. And then I was like, what's going on, guys? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, the vibe, something's going on here. What is happening? Right. But guess what? We had to deal with that before we got to the math because they were not there. But I think we just expect them to be there. And we're like, suck it up. You should have, learned this. last year. Guess what? My kindergartners didn't learn anything last year. So it's you haven't learned anything last year, so it's fine. We're starting from wherever we're starting. And that concept of better.
It's so interesting though too, right? Because there's tons of research out there to show that the brain shuts down if kids don't have what they need, and it doesn't matter what age they are, right? And especially in middle school, because there's so much social ambiguity and angst.
Social norms, and learning how to behave with each other.
Right. And so the only difference really between a kindergartner and a 6th or 7th grader is the fact that they've had more experience in covering up their emotions than a kindergartner has had. So we can tell them to suck it up because they've already been told to suck it up at times by many people before they've gotten to us. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and and something else to do with behaviors is I think that when kids get to a certain age, we think every negative behavior is intentional by them. And we think they're specifically doing this to try to be disruptive, to try to be I'm off task, to try to be this and that. And versus in kindergarten, if my kids go to and I'll never forget, this happened last year and it happens every year, but kids, when they get to the board, they don't know what to do. So they go play in the kitchen. What are you doing? They're like, well, I'm just playing. Because nobody told them until me, you can't just go play. Think about it. Parents would love you just to go play, right? That's wonderful. Yeah, go play quietly. So they just go to the kitchen. I don't really know what to do. I was like, well, that's not how that works. You don't just get to leave. And they're like, really? I'm like, really? But however, because of that, whenever my grade 6, 7s do things, I'm always thinking, oh gosh, what happened? Oh no. Oh, did you hear me? Sorry.
We're here. Yep.
What happened? Lost you.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine for me. I don't know. You guys went black. But then because of that, when my grade 6, 7s do something, I don't automatically assume they are trying to be defiant. And for example, and I told this story to Peter just yesterday, and I've told this story a lot because it happened last week and I was so offended by it at the time, but I had to laugh. Was a grade 6 boy. I love him dearly, but I was launching this on lesson. So we're I'm standing at the board. We're so excited. It's great. And there's maybe half a second of silence. And then all I hear is, and I was like, what is that? And I look over and he has a full bottle of ketchup and mustard and he is making himself a hot dog. And so in that moment, I could have been like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? And then I just howled laughing. And I was like, but you must be hungry. It is like 2:30 and it's almost the end of the day. But yeah, let's make a hot dog. Yeah, let's do that. But like, and then in those moments you just laugh, and I don't know. And I could have like maybe, but I don't know if I wasn't teaching the younger grades, if I would like have like, I'm like taken that in such a moment. I might have laughed like later, but in the moment I would have been like, you just ruined my lunch. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you being so disruptive? But he was making which also is nuts. Like that he brought a full-size bottle of ketchup and mustard.
I have so many questions about that.
I know. I need a total follow-up on this.
There's so many things. I was like, I just need to not. I was like, I don't know what you're doing, but you need to not be so disruptive. But you're hilarious, but please stop. So, in those moments, but like really, that was a kid who just wasn't reading the room. Mm-hmm. Right? Like he wasn't trying to like ruin everything. And he's like the kindest kid, but he was just really hungry and he needed to make this hot dog and he wanted to do it. And he like loves math, but he just needed to make it quick before we got to the boards.
Yep.
I was like, cool.
Hold on, I just need to eat this.
Yeah, just give me 1 second. I just gotta squeeze some more mustard and ketchup on here. So that's another example.
Oh my gosh, I am probably gonna be telling this story because I think it's that hilarious.
and honestly, the fact that it just happened like last Thursday is like blows up. I'm like, this happened like a week ago. I'm like, you're nuts. These kids are crazy sometimes.
Well, I think to like go along with that. Sometimes I think it goes the opposite way too, right? Like, so I will have some 6, 7, 8 teachers tell me I don't use manipulatives because do they need it, or they can't handle the using of the manipulative because they will play with it, or they will make designs with the pattern blocks instead of, or whatever. But then I'm like, that's really funny because like I know kindergartners who when given the opportunity to first play with it and explore it, like then use it as a tool.
Yeah.
You're like, so like
if you put manipulatives down in front of adults, they play with them.
I know. I'm like, when do we not? Like there has never been a time that I have brought pattern blocks to an adult professional development where they haven't come out and either made a design or sorted them by color or in shape or some variation on that theme. That happens every time.
Yeah,
we put something out. It's not. It's not like new.
No, not at all. Well, yeah, and I think this is in the Q&A of our green book, but because like somebody like I'm asked that same question of when I give my kids manipulatives, they just play. And I think our response is something like trying to stop kids from playing is like trying to stop the ocean with a broom. Like it's just never going to happen. Yeah. Just like let them play for a bit and then try to guide that play. And that's another huge thing I learned. Because once again, coming from like middle years, I was always that person who was like, you can, use these if you, need them, if you need them, which is like a dagger in the heart to some kids.
Yes.
You're like, not me. Like, I don't need them.
There's no chance I'm taking that.
Him,
I totally need it, but I'm not taking it. Yeah,
exactly. Right. And so I feel like teaching kindergarten, like it's just so much manipulatives and so much play and so much like, let's use things that make sense for you. Like, why don't you pick? And all of those like inventive ways that kids play, I've brought that in. And here's the thing. It's probably my grade 6, 7's favorite part is that they get to use manipulatives in so many different ways. And also, and I would say this is manipulatives can be very difficult. If you ask any, and I'm going to say this math teacher to show me division of fractions through manipulatives, and you think that is easier like than the flip and multiply, sure, okay. Yeah. Because like that's really deep learning. So people who want that deep learning, and that's what I've noticed is like we can have some really cool conversations about like I'm like, my big thing like lately has been like subtraction is not takeaway, and like looking at the comparison between two numbers. And you can do that if you use manipulatives.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it's pretty hard to get that understanding into the students if we don't do that. So then when I have my students in the like older grades, I can like really bring that in to be like, because when they do subtraction of like integers, which for us is in grade 7, guess what? The difference between two like integers is a lot simpler than trying to take away negatives that aren't there. And so like we have to like add like I'm 0 pairs. I'm like, what is going on, guys?
Right.
And I'm like, we're looking for the difference. You know what that means, right? So like, even like me understanding the curriculum more too has helped so much. Coming down to this age has really helped me understand why the curriculum is the way it is, and for me to understand it more deeply and to better serve them.
Well, and to have that flexibility yourself in your learning. Like, so for me, I'm coming in from literacy land into math land. So there was a whole chunk of time where I didn't want to be here. But that
I'm with you, yeah, for sure. No, keep going.
That was the entry point for me, is when I had the opportunity to learn in ways that would have been helpful for me to learn the first time. And then that was like the gateway drug. It's like that idea of how you can use a manipulative or use a number line and think about what is that versus all of these rules and steps that I was supposed to remember. That's not happening. Like, that's just not how my brain works. I don't hold those things in short or long-term memory. Like it's really like, that's not happening. And so if I don't have that opportunity to play with something or think about it, or Molly and I will spend time talking through something and have to like, wait, okay, hold on, stop. Then we'll both like draw. And then we'll show each other our, that's part of that learning. If we're not learning it in those ways for our students, it's such a barrier, I guess. And like, we're just
equity, right?
I was telling some high school teachers I worked with last week, I was like, just because it is your 25th year as a freshman in Algebra 1, this is their first time.
Yep.
Their first time here. And so like, this is just part of your like life and thinking and your programming. And if you learned it in a very sequential memorizing way, like, and that's what you have kept going to, how is it allowing them access? Like, that for you, it's rote. It's like making a recipe you've made a million times before, and you don't need to look at the cookbook, but they have never cooked.
Yeah, they don't know what a spatula looks like. So we can't just give them this recipe.
Right. It's like, it's not happening, and providing them that access, it's huge.
Oh yeah. Completely.
What are some other things that for me at this point, it feels a lot like, just acknowledging the individual for being an individual and being a person. So what are some other things that fall in that, may or may not fall in that category for you, that you've learned through teaching kindergarten and going straight upstairs to 6-7?
So the grade 6-7s who are so well, and which is like funny too, because my 6-7s love that I teach kindergarten, I think too, because they want to hear stories, right? Mm-hmm. They love to hear them stories, and they always want to know what was they, what were they doing and blah blah. But then on the same side, I'll tell the kindergartners the my hot dog story, and they love it, right? Because they think it's so funny, because they would never do that, right? Because they would never get their lunch without being snack time. But actually, one of the things that I've really, really enjoyed in terms of the individual is I see such a shocking amount of growth within that 1 year in kindergarten, that it really makes me more, I guess, aware of the growth I'm seeing in the other, like with my 6 7s, specifically because in kindergarten, I do everything all year, right? Like we're always counting and we're always writing our numbers and we're always doing patterns and we're always doing this and that. And so they grow. And I guess I played this on like long game, right? Because I just know like that I can really assess them in June. And that's the only time that it should actually really matter if they know it or they don't, because they're still kind of constantly growing. Whereas I think that's really helped me with my 6 7s, knowing that just because like they didn't understand patterns in October, when we start doing like multiplication, they might show me something about a pattern or about ratios and making like ratio tables. I might be able to see some stuff. And so I think I'm more aware of like recognizing that I don't have to like put everything into like, okay, this is patterns and then I'm done. Get that, like I'm like out of here, right? Because that's just not what math is. And I don't think I saw those mathematical connections and just was not aware of like how much, even though I might not be teaching those students patterns right now, like anymore, they might be showing me like those things and they might still be working on their, their recognizing patterns or their like I'm adding, subtracting, all of those different things. And I think that's really important because the kindergartens, I do it all year. Right. Like you have to, and they're constantly doing it. And I'm seeing this huge growth and I'm like, oh, there's so many more connections. And I need to be more intentional about making those connections with my older grades, because then they see the connections in math, which I don't know why I didn't see it before. Once again, I thought math was boring because I was so good at it, but now I'm not good at it. And now I see it so well.
But that's the thing is, right? Like we all learned, like, here's your unit, teach your unit, move on. That's over. Even if you're going to use what you learned in that unit in a future unit, still, that's over. We tested you on that. You actually didn't do great. So that's too bad.
We're done now.
Yeah, because that was then. This is now. But, I'm always saying to teachers, you have the entire year to teach all of the things. I'm not saying it's easy for you to readdress something, but if something was really bad for a kid, you should probably readdress it at some point. Like they've had time to grow now. You've taught them more things. Like, how can you readdress that?
Oh yeah. Well, like this was a few weeks ago, but I gave my kinders these like, they're like linking kind of like chains, but they're like different shapes. So there's like a circle, a square, a triangle, and that's it. Is there a circle, square, triangle? I think that's it. I was like, I feel like there is a fourth shape I'm missing, but it is not coming out. So anyways, I was like, I don't know. Yeah. But anyways, and then there was 4 colors. And so I just said, sort them. And then it's funny because I use sticky tack just to show the kids how to like show the like links. And then of course, because they're kindergarteners and they want to see some sort of like form to like use it, they're like, and then like they all wanted their like I'm like sticky tack to put it up. So then I handed out like I'm sticky tack to every group. And then, but then what was cool was that they did it and then they had them like hanging. And then some kids started to like draw like around them. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then like one kid started to like count like each like row. And I was like, we're making like pictograph bar graphs right now. And we're counting and we're doing sorting. I was like, this is really cool. And like, it was all just very, natural. And then cut to another time where in my 6 7s, I was like, can somebody explain to me? I gave them a bunch of like diameters and circumferences and was like, okay, can you tell me like, how are these two connected? Like blah, blah. And then I was really happy because a bunch of kids made a bunch of table of like values and they were like looking at the ratio between the circumference and the diameter to figure out that, like all of it was 3.14, like it was pi. And that's why we have pi, is because it's that constant. But I was like, oh, how cool is it that like they took this, which is like a shape in space, and they're like using like ratios and they're using like patterns. Like, this is what I want to see. And I think that I'm more intentional about the tasks I give them because I'm like, okay, I know you guys like my kids generally end up loving like ratio tables. They just end up really liking them. It's just makes sense to them and they'll multiply that way too. Like, that's so okay. Yeah. Because you can make that. But then when I asked you to I'm like multiply, like I can't do that. Like, yes, you can. You just did it. It just looks different. Yeah. but you didn't do it through the standard algorithm. So you're confused now somehow.
It's like, it's okay.
Yeah,
Like,
it's okay.
it's totally okay. I have this conversation so much with 5th grade teachers. I'm like, I don't care if they use partial products. Like, end of story. I understand in Massachusetts, the standard for 5th grade is that they will use the American Standard algorithm. I don't care. Like, and you shouldn't really either when it comes down to it. Like, if they can conserve place value, if they like have an understanding, like that's what's going to last for them versus like making a small error because they forgot to cross something out or regroup like in the 3rd or 4th time that they're doing the multiplication, because like when they leave, they're not going to do multiplication on paper. Sorry.
No.
I'm 50. I don't like break out my clipboard in Home Depot
imagine?
and like, no, like not happening. Right.
Well,
like,
no.
but I need to know, like, if I didn't put a decimal in, like if the number that I'm getting out of my phone is a reasonable number.
Yes, we had lots of conversations about that today. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like, which is huge. Well, and like I was talking to this grade 7 boy after class, and we were like showing different strategies because he's like, I'm like long division. I'm like, I think that's awesome how you love that. I think that's really cool. And I said, but then we were talking about other strategies. And so then I gave him this really ugly decimal division. And then I said, do you know what strategy I would use for I'm like this? And he goes, and he's like so excited. Like, he's like, what? And I'm like, a calculator. And I was like, I would never do this on paper. And he goes, oh yeah, I guess. I'm like, yeah. I was like, this is super ugly. I don't want to deal with this. There's like just really ugly. It's okay to just tell the kids, by the way, like we have these cool strategies, but at the end of the day, if it's really ugly, just maybe bloop, bloop. And then just make sure like that you kind of know ish what it should be. Yeah. If you're close-ish, you're good to go. And that's probably another good thing from kindy is like my kindies are all about ish. They're like, yeah, I know about like, like they're all, because like, I will say, oh, grab about 10 blocks, right? Just grab about 10 blocks. And can you show me how many like ish, and I think that's really good for them to play in that ish realm because they're not upset when things aren't perfect. My 6-7s are devastated when I walk away without giving them the actual answer.
Oh, yeah.
My kinders have never asked once. They're like, okay, bye. Like, bye, Mrs. D. I'm like, okay, bye, guys. They're like, they couldn't care less like if the answer was right or wrong or who knows what.
Yeah.
So
how does it like change so much in a short period of time, right? From going from that in kindergarten to devastation. If you don't have the right answer or whatever, it's
but and I would say that it is really helpful to like because I believe these behaviors we see in these like kindergartens and grade 1s can be revitalized. Like I don't think it's like lost. It's not like just gone forever. I think it can come back, and I think it's just we have to be more intentional about how we address like these things. So like I always think about like riskiness, right? Like kindergarten kids will make every mistake in the world and be perfectly fine with it. But then the question is what happens? What makes them so terrified by grade 6, 7 to make a mistake? Right. It's the culture. It's like the praise culture of like, congratulations, like you like did it. Good job. And then not getting praise, but then also like their mistakes, like living there forever on paper, right? Or whatever else, right? Like there was a kid who I gave a small assessment to it or to her, and she had missed some and she was just like struggling. She's so brilliant, but she was just having a rough day and she was like crying and she handed this in and then I just ripped it up in front of her and I was like, we're just going to forget about that. I'm not even gonna look at it. We're gonna just try again tomorrow. And she goes, okay. And I was like, you focus she was giving so much like energy to that piece of paper. And I was like, do you want me to mark this? And she's like, no. I'm like, then I won't. And I was like, it's in the trash. We're gonna pretend like it didn't happen and we'll talk about it later. Because I don't need a kid who's bawling his eyes out, because once again, in those kindergarten rooms, if I don't have them emotionally okay and safe, they have to feel safe. You know, like you see those kindergarten kids who love their kindergarten teachers and they run up and they hug you and they're, oh yeah, like Miss Ma-" amazing. But it's like, if they don't feel safe, they can't do anything. They can't be successful in any capacity. So safety has become a really important thing.
We were talking a lot today at school about mistakes and using mistakes for learning, but also using mistakes to feel like mistakes are positive things that I know that I'm saying it again for learning, but I mean, it really has an impact if you're saying, okay, I'm going to look at this, we're looking at this, there is a mistake. Where is that mistake? Find where the mistake is. And my teacher's just complaining that kids are making all of these careless errors. I'm like, but let's have them practice. Let's give them some things and tell them there's a mistake here. Find it, so that they can start doing that in their own work.
Oh, this is so wonderful, because this is actually what I've been doing over the past year. I started doing this kind of consolidation, which is a little bit different than Peter's, which is an error analysis. And so essentially I will do work similar to their work, but usually I will find a common misconception that's somewhere along the board. In the last 30 minutes, depending on how long the M class is, I will find something that has happened often. And then what I will do is I will put up my work and be like, hey guys, you guys get to be the teachers today. And as the teacher, you guys get to help me fix any mistakes I've made. But here's the catch. A good teacher never, ever, ever says the negative stuff first. That's not how teachers work. Teachers want to give soft blows. So you guys have to look through and then find everything correct and good about my work. And then we talk about that first. And then we talk about what was my mistake and then how to fix it. And then we have lots of conversations about look at how many check marks are on here. And there's 1 X.
Right.
Is this bad work? They're like, no, it's fine. I'm like, yeah, right. Like, we're just one fix away from the correct solution. And it's not all bad. We can't just throw it all out. Like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, like that old phrase, right? It's like, but I think it's so important how we spend some time. And also the kindergarten, they love that, because they love to be the teacher. They think it's the most fun thing. And usually I will always finish off by I'm going, thank you so much, guys. You guys help me learn so much. And I love spending time here. And that is just reassuring for them that they've helped me, because they don't want to make mistakes because they haven't seen, because nobody shows them, hey, here's my mistake. Right. We talk about my mistakes. Nobody has to own this but me. But now when you make one, it's not a big deal, because we can talk about it.
Yeah. And I just feel like they can be used for so many things too. I don't know. It's such a big culture shift. And I think in particular in middle school, the culture is so important, because their egos are very fragile at that time, as you have described continuously throughout this conversation, comparatively to kindergarten. So I don't know. It's what I've been talking about for the last 2 visits at this middle school that I've been working in.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. It is tough. And also I think that you need to be really humble as well. You have to be willing to be humbled. Kindergarten kids are great for this. I will say this right now. I've been humbled more. For example,
how old are you? You look.
Oh yeah. So no.
Thanks, kids.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. It's rough. Well, or so my hair is currently a little pink, and it'll get dyed whatever next week, but it's pink, and I don't dye my hair colors much, but I dyed it pink a while ago, and a kindergarten kid wanted to say, I like your hair, but they said, why is your hair pink? That's it. Why is your hair pink? I'm like, oh, what? And I was like, well, just because I wanted to dye it. And here, I'm mid-30s, feeling pretty attacked by this 5-year-old. And I'm like, I was like, I don't know. I don't why. And then she's like, I like it. I was like, okay, you should just say that first next time. Yes. Next time you want to compliment someone, you don't say, why is your hair pink? I'm like, why are you mad about it?
Oh my God, that's so cute.
So yeah,
Wow.
because I think that math teachers also need to be humble sometimes.
It's
Mhm.
true enough. True enough.
Well,
I need to be the
yeah,
expert.
and that idea of like, can we fix this in this moment? Like what is the little tweak versus like the big one, right? Like sometimes I taught cooking last week to a bunch of teenagers, and this is a whole other thing. And I told them, I was like, baking and cooking, like, yes, they like we think that they're, but it's not. Okay, like baking, if we make a mistake in our measurements, more than likely we're just gonna have to throw it out and start over, because like that's what it is. I said cooking, like you're tasting all the way through. Like that's what we're doing. We're tasting all the way through, and you can change it. Like you put too much salt in, like what are the things that we can do? We can peel a potato, we can throw that in, we can make it, we can add more of everything else. We can, like there are other things that we can do to adjust that. That's just like what you're doing in the classroom. Like you can make little tweaks as you move through, as your thinking changes. It is not baking. Like
No, it's not baking.
It isn't.
Thank God
It
for
isn't.
that. That would
And
be
so
bad.
like you have those moments to change and adjust as you go through. And I think sometimes we think teaching is baking versus cooking, because we come in with a set recipe of like very specific steps and measurements that we're going to follow. And if we don't get through that whole thing, we think we failed, versus like cooking. No, you're adjusting. What do you have in the house? What don't you have?
Yeah, tasting, right? And and like you're like, ooh, gotta like change here.
Right. But also when we project that recipe on students, then they also feel that if they mess up the recipe, then they're throwing out all of their effort was worth nothing. So that's, I really like that analogy. But the tasting along the way, right, for teaching is like, okay, we're going to check in with students, see what's going on. We're not just going to be like, okay, they made a mistake right here. It's all over. Right. Love it.
Well, and I think like there's the guidelines, right? Like the guidelines for it. So I was thinking like, if we're giving kids like a map, right? Like the map is the recipe for soup. You're making vegetable, like, okay, so you don't have turkey, chicken. You don't have like there are things, but like we want to make soup.
Yeah.
That's the end result that we want. So like based on what we have, we're going to make adjustments as we go on, but end result is still soup.
Yeah.
Like, it just may look a little different.
That's so good though. Well, and I think the other like nice part too is that like people's soup takes like longer, right? Like it's like, some people's soup is really, really fast, and some people have to like, people make their stock from scratch, and then it takes forever to make that. And but then like my husband hates like onions, so I would never put those in my soup, right? But like, and like those kinds of like those choices. And I think that's a beautiful thing too, is that in mathematics, if we can help kids make those choices by like modeling how we make our choices, and how like we are like fluid, and we're not like, I'm not coming in with my like laminated like lesson plan. It's usually a sticky note with about 4 like numbers on it is usually like what it is. And my kids go, are you kidding me? I'm like, yeah, I don't even want to talk about it today. It was a busy day, guys. Here it is. Right. But like those kinds of things of like showing them like we're willing to kind of adjust and move and change, allowing them to see that and being okay, because like, because my like younger kids, like they'll make mistakes all day long and they'll have so much fun, and they're happy to pivot and change. And if you can like imbue that into the older grades, that's amazing, right? If you can get them to do that.
Yeah. All of this for me, like if I were to sum up this conversation, I would probably use the word culture to describe it, because I feel like what you've talked about is so much positive culture building, acknowledging students, really looking at individuals and actually building like a culture where mistakes are valued and looked at as learning opportunities. I love it so much.
Yeah, This was great, guys. I love it.
Well, and we could keep going, but we know that you have
We
to
know
get
that you
going
have
as
to
well.
catch a flight.
So
I'll still be there.
how can people learn more about you?
Oh, well, you can check out like, which is funny because it's on Peter's on my website, which is buildingthinkingclassrooms.com, which is still like wonderful. And there's a bunch of the things that I believe in. You can read the book. Like I'm obviously the green book mathematics tasks.
I have
I
it here.
know mine's in the other room, unfortunately.
Oh, she
I
went
wouldn't
behind the
think that I would have thought to have that.
No, I have it.
Yeah,
Here we go.
book.
Green one.
You can read,
Green one, people.
yes, you can read like that book, but also read the like an orange one.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Yeah. You can find me on all social medias. Maegan Giroux, yeah, that one. Read that one for sure first. And then also people can like message or can send me a like an email. It is just Maegan at buildingthinkingclassrooms.com. So it's just my first name. So please reach out. I'd love to hear. And I also love to hear the stories of really anybody who is, struggling, having success, because usually I will have a matching story to be like, yeah, been there, girl or guy, or yeah, or person. I've been there. I've been there with you.
Let me tell you about my hot dog story.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And the worst part is that I have so many of those stories. I'm like, I have so many stories where like kids are actually ridiculous in my class. I'm like, sure. Okay. Let's just let it roll. Let's just like, let it ride. I don't even know.
Oh, this was amazing. We appreciate you giving us some of your time and sharing your latest thoughts of learning, and I hope to see you in person.
Yes, wouldn't that be wonderful?
It would. It would.
So good.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Wow. As
It was a very
usual.
quick hour, as usual.
It was. I know. As usual, we could go on.
We're always like, oh yeah, but this happens every time, and it's going to happen again.
I know. We act like it doesn't. I know.
It's going to happen again on the 27th. Anamata is here, and we're really excited for that conversation as well. We have a little bit of a winter break, so we hope that you enjoy that time as well. You can find us book at Math Activators, which I should have grabbed a copy while I was grabbing the green book.
Nope.
I didn't. But you can find that at Didax.
Look at me.
Oh, there you go. Right there. Right there.
Awesome.
And also, you can follow along on any of our social media. Until then, we hope that you will make math creative, curious, and inclusive for everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.